Welcome, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my girlfriend, Zariah Cole, ever did was play my private voice note at a crowded house party like it was a comedy sketch, then look straight at me while her friends laughed at the parts of me I only shared because I trusted her. Here's how it happened. I didn't storm out. I didn't shout. I just sat there on a stranger's sectional in a townhouse in Logan Circle, Washington, D.C., listening to my own voice tremble through somebody else's Bluetooth speaker, realizing she wanted the room to see me as small. The voice note wasn't flirty or dramatic or anything you'd expect at a party. It was me late at night, telling her I'd been struggling since my mom died, that I was trying to keep it together at my job in Chicago, while my chest felt tight for no reason. I told her I hated waking up tired. I told her I missed my mother's laugh more than I could explain. She had asked me to be honest, and I believed her. Hearing it played back with people giggling felt like being stripped in public without anyone touching you. Zariah sat up like she was hosting a show. She rewound the audio at the saddest part, then made a face like she was imitating me. Her friends, Asia, Kendall, Monroe, and a guy named Reese, laughed too loudly, like laughing was how they stayed loyal to her. Some people stared into cups, pretending not to hear. No one said, "That's private." No one said, "Turn it off." Zariah watched my reaction the way someone watches a screen, not a person. When my eyes met hers, she smirked like she'd won something. I stood up slowly to leave, and she followed me down the hallway like I was the one being dramatic. "Do not do that wounded man act," she said, smiling like this was still fun. I asked her why she would do that. She shrugged. "You take everything too seriously. I was loosening you up." There was no apology in her voice, not even an accidental one. She said it like humiliating me was a healthy relationship activity, like my feelings were clutter she was cleaning up. That was the moment something in me cooled down and got organized. We hadn't started like this. When I met Zariah in Chicago, she was warmth and sparkle. She ran a small event planning side business and could make a boring room feel alive. Our first date was a little place in Hyde Park where she insisted the waiter pick my dessert based on my face. I laughed harder than I expected to because he actually tried. She used to tuck her arm into mine like she belonged there. In the early days, she sent me voice notes just to narrate her day, even the silly parts. Our first inside joke came from a cooking attempt that went wrong in a funny way. She wanted to make fancy pasta in my apartment and kept reading the recipe like it was scripture. I kept taste testing the sauce like I was a professional. She swatted my hand away with a wooden spoon, and I told her she was acting like a strict chef on a cooking show. She put a dish towel over her shoulder and started giving me fake instructions, and we laughed until the smoke alarm reminded us we were not, in fact, professionals. That night felt easy, like home could be built with jokes. The shift started small, the way a crack starts under paint. Zariah loved an audience. At brunch with her friends, she'd tell stories and exaggerate details to get laughs, and at first I thought it was harmless. Then she started using me as the punchline. If I corrected a restaurant bill, she'd say, "He is so controlling about money," and her friend would laugh while I forced a smile. If I got quiet after a long week, she'd say, "He's doing his mysterious thing again," like my calm was a costume. The first time I told her it bothered me, she didn't soften. She leaned in and said, "You are too sensitive," like it was a diagnosis. She would do something sharp, then act annoyed that it hurt. That pattern became her favorite trick, the cut, then the shrug. When I tried to talk seriously, she'd scroll on her phone. When I asked for privacy, she'd call it secrecy. Even then, I stayed because I remembered the version of her who danced in my kitchen and kissed my forehead while the pasta boiled. One Friday, she invited me to a rooftop hangout in West Loop with her friends. I'd had a rough week at work, and I told her I wasn't really up for being social. She said, "Just show up and smile. Do it for me." At the rooftop, she disappeared into her group, leaving me standing at the edge like a coat rack. When I joined the circle, she introduced me as her quiet provider, and her friends laughed like that was a compliment. I stood there holding my drink, watching myself get reduced to a role. After that night, she started pushing my boundaries on purpose. She would read my texts out loud and do a dramatic voice, even when the messages were normal. She'd tell her friends when I had a hard day, but she'd tell it like gossip, not concern. If I asked her not to share something, she'd say, "I'm not hiding you," as if privacy and shame were the same thing. It wore me down in a quiet way. I started choosing my words carefully around her, like I was managing a public statement instead of talking to my partner. Still, there were moments that felt like the old us, and those moments kept me anchored. We took a weekend trip to Detroit once for a small festival, and she held my hand on the river walk like she loved me, not like she owned me. We took a ridiculous photo in front of a giant sculpture and agreed it was our album cover. Later, we got lost trying to find a late-night diner, and we ended up eating pancakes at a place that looked like it hadn't changed in 30 years. She laughed with syrup on her lip, and I thought, maybe we are okay. Back in Chicago, she convinced me to record voice notes instead of long texts because she said she liked hearing my voice. I didn't grow up doing that. I'm the kind of man who chooses his words and keeps moving. But I tried because I wanted to meet her halfway. I sent her notes when I was in the car, when I was walking into the grocery store, when I was thinking about her. She'd respond with heart emojis, and for a while I believed the intimacy was real. I didn't see she was collecting pieces of me like material. The cruelty escalated when her friends started treating our relationship like a group project they controlled. If I planned a date, she'd consult their opinion before saying yes. If I bought her something thoughtful, she'd hold it up for them to judge. One time I gave her a necklace, and she turned to Asia and said, "Is this cute or is this basic?" Asia said, "Basic," and Zariah laughed in my face like I had given her a joke. She wore it anyway, but she never wore it around me. That was her pattern: take, then disrespect. The money part came next. Zariah wasn't broke, but she liked spending like consequences were for other people. She'd forget her wallet at dinner, then giggle and say, "Babe, you got me." She'd ask me to cover something and promise to pay it back, then change the subject when I brought it up. The cruel part wasn't the money itself. It was how she treated my effort like it was automatic. When I tried to set boundaries, she called me stingy. When I held steady, she told her friends I was changing. I tried to fix it a healthy way. I suggested couples counseling. I suggested we spend less time with our friends and more time building our own routines. I suggested we keep certain things private. Zariah smiled like she was humoring a child. "I'm not going to therapy because you can't handle jokes," she said. That sentence stayed with me because it was so clean in its cruelty. She didn't see my hurt as real. She saw it as a weakness I was inconveniencing her with. And once you realize someone enjoys your discomfort, you stop negotiating. The house party in D.C. happened because her friend Kendall had just moved into a townhouse and wanted a big welcome event. Zariah said it would be good for us, like being surrounded by our people would heal what she and I were breaking privately. We flew out for the weekend. At first, it felt normal. Music, food, cousins drifting in and out, people comparing jobs and neighborhoods. Zariah stayed close to me for the first hour, touching my shoulder, laughing at my jokes, playing the girlfriend role, so while I almost relaxed. Then she asked me for my phone. "I want to play something funny you sent me," she said, sweet as sugar. I hesitated because my stomach didn't trust her, even if my heart still tried to. She rolled her eyes and said, "You are acting paranoid." I handed it over to avoid a scene, telling myself I was overthinking. She connected to the speaker like she'd done it 100 times, and she held my phone in her hand like it belonged to her. I remember thinking, briefly, that her nails looked perfect for someone with careless intentions. When my voice note started, it took me a second to recognize myself. Then I heard the part where my voice cracked when I mentioned my mom. The room reacted like it was entertainment. Zariah laughed first, and her friends followed. A guy near the kitchen said, "That is wild," like he was watching a prank. My face didn't move much, but inside I felt hollow. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was betrayal, the kind that makes you question every time you ever trusted someone in the dark. Zariah watched me suffer and didn't blink. That's important. She didn't blink. I stood and walked toward the hallway, and Zariah came after me. She told me not to ruin the vibe. I told her she had ruined something else. She frowned like she didn't understand what I meant, then said, You are not about to make me look bad in front of my friends. That sentence flipped a switch in me. She wasn't worried about hurting me. She was worried about her image. And I realized I had been protecting her feelings while she was harvesting mine for laughs. So I walked back into the living room with a decision already made. Calmly, I asked the room, since we were sharing audio tonight, can I play one too? Zariah laughed and waved her hand like she couldn't wait for me to embarrass myself again. Do it, she said. She assumed I had nothing. People assume quiet men are empty. I connected my phone and picked a file I had never planned to use like this. I didn't record it for revenge. I recorded it because my instincts had been warning me for months, and I'd finally started keeping my own receipts, privately, carefully, without drama. Zariah's voice filled the room, clear as day. I do not even like him like that. He is just stable. He will pay for stuff, and if he starts questioning it, I will make him look crazy. There was background laughter, friends in the room agreeing. Then she said, if he ever leaves, I will tell everybody he was controlling. They will believe me. The silence wasn't slow. It dropped like a curtain. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. People looked at Zariah, then at each other, like they'd been caught holding the wrong story in their hands. Zariah didn't show remorse. Not even a hint. Her face hardened in anger like I had committed the crime by exposing her words. You are sick, she snapped, reaching toward the speaker. You always recording something. This is why. She stopped because the room was still quiet, and even her loyal friends looked uncertain. Asia's mouth was slightly open. Kendall's eyebrows pinched like she was replaying the audio in her head. Zariah tried to laugh it off, but her laugh sounded thin. She said, he is twisting it, but nobody rushed to defend her. I unplugged my phone, slid it into my pocket, and walked out without a speech. I didn't slam doors. I didn't call her names. I didn't try to convince anyone I was right. I left the townhouse and walked 2 blocks until I found a quiet corner under a streetlight. My hands shook once the adrenaline faded. I stood there breathing like I'd been underwater. Then my phone lit up with text from Zariah, not apologizing, demanding, come back. You embarrass me. You are ruining my weekend. Not one message said, I hurt you. The next day, I changed my flight. I didn't tell her first. I simply moved like a man who finally accepted reality. When I got back to Chicago, I didn't post anything. I didn't call her friends to argue. I started with practical steps, because practical steps are how you survive when your emotions are bruised. I moved my valuables out of our shared place while she was still in D.C. I changed my passwords. I separated our bills. I took my name off anything that wasn't mine. Each step felt like a stitch closing a wound she kept trying to reopen. She came back and acted like I was the villain, exactly like she promised in that recording. She told people I was controlling. She told my friend Darnell I was obsessive. She sent long paragraphs try to bait me into arguing so she could screenshot it. I didn't give her material. That was karma, the first kind, the kind that happens when a manipulator loses access to your reactions. She hated silence more than she hated being wrong. She left voicemails full of anger, then sent cheerful messages 2 minutes later, trying to reset. I didn't respond to either. I suffered quietly for weeks. I kept showing up to work like my chest wasn't tight. I ate meals without tasting them. I replayed the party over and over, hearing the laughter, feeling the heat in my face. The painful part wasn't just her cruelty. It was the realization that some of her friends enjoyed it too. It made me question my judgment. It made me question whether my calmness was naive. I started therapy privately, not as a dramatic journey, but as maintenance. I needed my mind back. I needed sleep. I needed to stop hearing her voice as authority. In that same season, I stopped being generous in the places I had been exploited. I kept my money organized. I paid off 2 lingering debts. I canceled subscriptions I didn't use. I put that extra money into a savings account and a small, boring investment plan my coworker recommended. It wasn't glamorous. It was stable. And stability became my quiet revenge. Not revenge against her, but revenge against the version of me who thought love meant tolerating disrespect. While she tried to spin stories about me, I built routines she couldn't interrupt. That was karma, the second kind, growth she couldn't access. The funny part is, Once I stopped chasing her approval, my world got lighter. I started cooking again and laughing at my own mistakes without worrying someone would use it against me. I went to a comedy show with my friend Malcolm and laughed until my stomach hurt. I took a weekend trip to Milwaukee alone, sat by the lake, and realized solitude could be peaceful instead of lonely. I flirted with a barista at a coffee shop and surprised myself by feeling normal. The romance I missed wasn't her. It was how I used to feel in my own life before she made everything performative. Zariah's karma stayed private and realistic, exactly how it should. The friends who heard that recording didn't cancel her publicly. They just backed away. Kendall stopped inviting her out. Asia stopped answering quickly. Monroe stopped reacting to her posts. Zariah kept pretending she was unbothered, but the circle that used to clap for her started shrinking. Then her event planning side business took a hit because she relied on those friends for referrals and free help. People quietly chose not to work with someone who bragged about using a partner. No one announced it. They just stopped showing up. Zariah still didn't apologize. She just blamed everyone else. Months later, she texted me like I still belonged to her. "I need you to talk to me," she wrote, followed by, "You cannot ignore me forever." It wasn't remorse. It was entitlement. I read it, felt nothing spike in my chest, and deleted it. That was my final confirmation that I was healed enough to choose peace without proving anything. I moved into a new apartment in Bronzeville, kept my life quiet, and took a better role at work with higher pay and less chaos. No speeches, no public victory lap, just a man who got his voice back and decided it would only be heard by people who deserved it. If you made it this far, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And comment your city/state or country. I'm doing a special dedicated video for the most mentioned location in the comments. Where are you watching from?